Hello, I'm your host, Dr. Michael A. Robinson, and welcome to Living Education e-magazine, a magazine show that discusses educational issues important in our everyday lives. Today on Living Education e-magazine, we will discuss the importance of African American fathers in the lives of their children. We will discuss how the presence of fathers and other significant male role models impact a child's education. Mr. William E. Rogers, single father of four. Mr. Rogers was recently honored by the Writing Mama Foundation for his remarkable work as a single parent. Dr. Walter Dozier, Director of Communications and Government Affairs at the Prince George's African American Museum and Cultural Center. Mr. Victorious Hall, who's a teacher with Possibility Prep, an all-boys charter school in Prince George's County, Maryland, and also a contributing writer with Patch.com. And Dr. Ivory Tolson, Associate Professor of Counseling Psychology at Howard University. Welcome, Jim, and welcome to Living Education e-magazine.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
I want to share some information with each of you regarding some important facts around fatherhood, and I certainly want to get your thoughts on this. It's estimated that 23.6 million children, or 32.3%, live absent of their biological fathers. When you dig a little deeper into the data, you see that of students in grades 1 through 12, 39%, over 17 million, live in homes absent their biological father. So my question to you, now I'll start with you, Dr. Dozier. What is the impact of numbers like this on our society?
I try to look at it from an economic point of view. I was just listening to attorney Michelle Alexander, who's written a new book called The New Jim Crow, and she says the best predictor of crime in our communities is based upon job availability. Mm-hmm. You and I have had discussions that talk about the predictor of job availability being based upon education, so that if our kids are not getting quality education, they're not going to be able to get jobs in the future. Now, we know that there's some issues with the penal system, but there's some things that we could be doing in our communities to help stem this this flow of absentee fathers. And we have to look at it economically. If men cannot get livable wage jobs, they can't support families. They can't support families, then the children are not going to be in a position to take advantage of the educational opportunities that we have.
Right. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll speak to that. I mean, specifically regarding the numbers that you shared, I think it's important that we keep in perspective that these numbers represent a lot of different situations. And a lot of the situations aren't necessarily bad. There are parents that get divorced. The father is still involved in the child's life. Right. And you can also have some two-parent households where the father is cooking crack in the kitchen. And so it's important for us to not segment the population as two-parent versus one parent and leave it at that. And that's what I see a lot of the schools doing. When I talk to schools about this issue, their head goes down. We have all these black kids in single-parent households. And the reality is that there are more black kids in single-parent households than in two-parent households today. And we are the only race that's like that. However, when you try to make clear distinctions, clear differentiations of, these are the characteristics of a single-parent household. These are characteristics of a two-parent household. A lot of times we end up making judgments, stereotyping, and really not pushing them to the potential that they could have. Yeah, so I always tell people to focus on who the father is, not necessarily whether he's in the house, because there's a lot you can do for your kid not being in the house.
Right, and we'll talk about what some of those things are that
Right.
dads can do who are not necessarily living in the home. Anyone else comment?
Well, I'm just piggybacking. It just seems that there is a stigma with a single parent household, and that needs to be first dealt with. There are very strong single parent households, as well as there are some weak ones. But teachers, society, and on whole, just tends to put this stigma on a child coming as they're disadvantaged or they can't achieve. That stigma has to change.
Right.
And I think definitely stereotyping and placing stigma is definitely one thing that, as educators and educators, is something that we definitely have to be aware of. But I also push, and I think that it's very important for our communities to try to make sure that we build strong families, because building strong families ultimately builds strong communities. And from being a father, children need consistency in their lives, and I think fathers play a major role in the development of children. So I think definitely make sure that we watch our stereotyping, but we also need to push consistency with fathers, and we also need to push quality families as well.
We're going to talk a little bit about what it takes to get that consistency from fathers in the home. But I think William talked about an important part, that perception. You know, what does it look like? Do you think society, this is for anyone on the panel, do you think society supports the efforts of fathers, particularly African-American fathers, to be committed to their children, their families, their community? Basically, I'm asking, is society father-friendly, particularly as it relates to African-American men?
Is it cool to be a father in today's time, in a generation in which we exist today? From analyzing the way in which our culture is rearing our children, no, I wouldn't believe so. I don't think that it's supported in the things and the images that our children see and the images that black men see on a consistent basis. We don't see us being fathers consistently. Our students, I deal with a lot of trying to develop them holistically and seeing, and I think being a good father starts with the respect of women. And I think sometimes we touch on the surface level, but fatherhood is definitely connected with being a husband, right? All of these things are interconnected. One can't exist without the other. But I definitely think that we have to rear our children to understand that part of being a man is being a good father and developing yourself, and part of developing yourself is respecting your woman. And I think those things are not advocated with regard to black men, which causes some of the times these single parent homes.
In respect to your question, the images that are portrayed in the media of black males is not of fatherhood. It's of us from the wire on the corner slinging. It's from us disrespecting black women, not being able to hold a monogamous relationship. All of these factor in when this is what the children are seeing. So they're being raised, unless you have that significant figure, they're being raised to say, well, this is how I'm supposed to act. This is how I'm supposed to treat women. Instead of being reinforced at home. So, in answer to your question, and piggybacking, it's not cool to be a father today.
How do we make it cool? How do we make it important, and how do we push that needle from society to understand that it is cool to be a father? We can't expect the mainstream society to say, oh, we want to take on the responsibility of putting African American men or men in general in a positive light. That is some self-responsibility. But how do we move that needle so that society sees, or that we are able to combat that image that society puts out about the positiveness of being a father, being an actively engaged dad as well.
Yeah, I think there's a lot we can do, and it all starts with us. But I teach a parent cooperation class at the court, and the fathers that I work with are fathers who are trying. They are in a situation where they're in a custody dispute with their former significant other, and they're trying to find their way back into the house. A lot of times there's a lot of finger pointing, blame games. But in talking to them, I know that they do feel like the court system anyway looks at them as though their role in the home is not as significant, or their role to the child is not as significant as the mother's role. And so they grapple with that, but I applaud them for being there. But the reality is that society in general views the role of the mother much more favorably and as much more important than the role of the father. And I think that as we make the shift from being vast majority two-parent households, we come from the time when a child being born out of wedlock was an illegitimate child. A divorced family was a broken family. You had bastard children, things like that. These are things that have to kind of fade away out of our cultural vernacular. And we need to start thinking about what does this new world look like? Because the reality is, like I said before, about 60% of us aren't in those two-parent households. So as far as what we need to do, I think programs like the one that I teach at the court, where you find a path for fathers to try to engage, re-engage or reconnect to their child's life through the court system, that's important. There's a lot of other father programs where fathers can get together and talk about different issues. I think those are important. There's a lot of actively engaged fathers that start programs like that to engage other people. And I can also remember a time when I was young, you had rappers like Tupac and people like that used to talk in this venomous ways against their father, and it almost when I was in high school in the 90s or the late 80s, early 90s, it almost seemed like it was cool not to have a father back then. And so I'm not sure if things have changed for young people nowadays in that regard. But we have to start thinking about ourselves differently. And I do know that a lot of the kids back then who didn't have a father in their home. I came from a divorced family. I don't think anybody's father does. If you're from a divorced family like I am, there's going to be times when you don't see your father as much as you want to, and when you're an angry teenager, sometimes you're a little bit more unfair towards the one who's not there than the one who you're with. So I think we need to examine all that.
I just think we have to. One of my biggest things I read when I was in college, I read a book called Cool Pose, and it's about the African American male coolness and pretty much what we do on a consistent basis in order to maintain a consistency of cool. And the young kids call it swag. Can't stand that word, but that's what they call it, right? And I think one of the biggest things is we have to be able to be relatable to our students, right? So we have to be able to be relatable to young people and engage them in conversations about fatherhood. So I teach history, but I also teach, how to be father. I openly express what I'm doing with my son on a consistent basis, how much I love my son, how much I love them. So they be able to show affection and be able to be welcoming of affection, because, our young brothers, they're not even welcoming of affection from other men. Right? And so we have to be able to just make that comfortable again and make that cool. And I think things will kind of iron out themselves once students know and youth know that it's cool to be affectionate to children.
And we're going to hold you to that. It's going to get better.
Oh yeah, well, of course it will. Oh, it will.
Absolutely. Anyone else?
I think that this cultural swell it's coming. Mm-hmm. That we can't depend on the mainstream media to start this movement. And, places I go, I hear this kind of conversation, but I think it's incumbent upon men to step out of the shadows and be more open about having this conversation, whether it's in a barber shop or, if, you're at a sports field. There was a time in our community where, a guy would come into the barber shop and somebody say, "How you doing?" And he said, "Well, yeah, I'm doing okay, having some baby mama drama," and he beat up his mom, beat up his child's mother, and there would be no reaction. We wouldn't say anything. But now I'm seeing more men step forward to say, wait a minute, that's not right. You need to check yourself. You need to correct yourself. And the more we get that, then the less I think the less tolerance men in the society are going to have for that kind of behavior, and it checks us off. So I think we're getting there. It's slow, and there are pockets of change, and it's coming.
I also think that we're not only responsible for our children.
Right.
We're responsible for the children that our children associate with.
That's that village.
That village mentality. Mm-hmm. And as we are expressing it with our sons or our daughters, to some degree we have to start expressing that to their friends as well. It's like I will, anytime that I'm out with my kids and their friends are around, I will big up them as well as I will big up the other children. Yeah. If they happen to be in my household and we happen to go shopping for one of my children, the friend that comes with them gets something as well.
Excellent.
We have to show them, even if it's not in their household, they're not receiving it in their household, we as fathers, as men, have to extend ourselves beyond just our own circle.
Basically what you defined and described was accountability. And I asked this to the panel. How difficult is it really for men to hold other men accountable for behaviors that are not necessarily positive behaviors and hold up the image of a man? So if someone decides that they're going to step outside the marriage, or they're being overall disrespectful, do you find it really difficult? Do you think men find it difficult to confront another man about that?
It can be difficult, but we have to have community standards. We have to have some cultural standards, and according to my parents, we had these at one point, and they slipped away. But it sounds like they're coming back, and they're regenerating with younger men like you have here, and I think it's going to work. It's not going to happen overnight, but obviously this conversation is probably being had somewhere else in the country, and we got to get there. We're in a desperate situation. We cannot fail.
Yeah, I think it depends on how well you know the person. If it's someone you know very well, then it's very easy. But if you're just at a barbershop and someone who you don't know at all is talking about different things. And I was in a situation actually at a barbershop where someone was saying some very disrespectful things. And, I didn't know the person, but I just tried to change the conversation, or just let people in the barbershop know that not everybody felt like him, without directly challenging him, just putting out a more positive image out there, because he was talking about, women was this, and how, and basically all the reasons why he said he would never get married. And so I felt like, as someone there who had been married for 9 years, maybe I should interject why that there's another side of that, and that it is positive for some people.
And I think that still goes to the whole thing about accountability. It may not have been directly to that person, but you spoke to the overall theme that was coming out during that conversation. And a lot of us sometimes tend to recoil from having that kind of conversation because it may be perceived as confrontational in a way, but do we have that dichotomy in conversations like that?
I think it's the way you approach it. Number one, you got to walk the walk. You can't talk about doing what's right, doing the best thing, being a good father if you out there doing all the wrong things. Yeah. The other part of it is how you approach the situation. You see a bunch of teenagers maybe cursing up a storm, women in the area. You just you can approach them, and not all situations it's not 100%, but in some situations you gotta look, gentlemen, I understand your conversation is what it is, but we got ladies present. We can keep that talk outside if you have to, or that cursing and profanity. If you approach it respectfully and you don't make it a personal attack as a negative on them, but just the situation doesn't warrant it, then that helps the situation as well.
Right. Now, we know that there are probably many, many women watching our program, and they're probably thinking, well, you know, my contributions are important as well. And I don't think anything we said so far today has indicated that we don't value that and women's contributions aren't valued. But we're talking specifically about the value of fatherhood and the value of African American dads. But what are those values? What are the benefits, for lack of a better word, of having fathers actively involved and engaged? And I'll start with you, Victorious. As someone who's in the classroom, what are the benefits of having those young men having fathers or significant male role models in their life?
Every year, I do a social survey, and I ask my students who actually, I don't ask them the first day, but I ask them who lives with their parents, who lives with both parents in the household. Every year that I teach, my honor students have both parents. Every year that I teach, the students who are struggling rarely see their fathers. And this is something that I've been teaching for about 7 years, and this is something I consistently see. So one of the major things that we see is we see a lack of academic success. A major thing that I see is I see a hyper with brothers that who don't necessarily talk to their fathers on a consistent basis or have a relationship with their father. They have a hyper aggressive mentality. So it's a false sense of bravado. So it's like I have to present and engage a certain way in order to be seen as a man. So it's like it's not necessarily things that are intrinsic. It's not, they don't see manhood as an intrinsic thing. They don't see it as qualities or characteristics.
Like overcompensation.
It seems as if it's a mix between media influence and some of the things that they see on a consistent basis. So if they don't see a lot of times, it's funny. They always look at me. I call myself Brother Victorious in the classroom, and they always look at me as like some kind of mystical figure. Like, how do you even exist, right? So it's a false sense of bravado I see most of the time that has to be curtailed. And I also see a lack of want or fire for knowledge. But of course, there's exceptions to every rule. So I don't want you to think that every boy without a father is like horrible in school. It's not that, but from the studies that I've done, that's a lot of the things that I see consistently.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I used to have the kids I work with call me Brother Ivory. So I think,
that's cool. All right,
yeah,
look at us, man.
and actually, my stuff.
I'm sorry, it's funny though. The kids that I work around, they like Talia's dad, Deja's dad.
Okay.
Yeah, but I got that idea from my stepfather, who had me call him Brother Imari. And he didn't enter my life until he didn't become my stepfather until I was 18. Probably 16 is when he entered the picture. But there are certain known limitations to not having a father in the home. And I think that looking at how people who didn't have a father in the home, and I'll use myself as an example, looking at how we still was able to achieve, I think that's probably the most important thing we can do, because the reality is there's no easy way to get all these fathers back in the home, unless we improve marriage rates. Now the good thing is that divorce rates are going down, but marriage rates are going down too. So I think people are making better decisions about getting married, but they're still not marrying as much. But we still, our first black president grew up without his father. So we know that there are other opportunities that exist. It's just a matter of trying to understand what those opportunities are. I think having a black male in the classroom is an important way to overcompensate for that, or to compensate for that. I know in my life, I did get to see my father sometime when he got remarried and got a new family. Those opportunities lessened a little bit. And some of the barriers between us are things that I created when I was going through my teenage resentful stage. But having him still reaching out and trying, even when I was rejecting him sometimes, and with my mother constantly involving me in other things. My mother always had me involved in some kind of program where there was black males around me, that I could use as positive models.
And that's what we mean by those significant male role models, when the dad is absent or not present,
Right.
surrounding them with those significant male role models.
I think they call those the extended fatherhood opportunities, and those take place in our community all the time. They're under the radar a lot of times. What you're doing is another example. I'll give you an example of, I was at Home Depot a couple weeks ago, and the young man, he was helping, I don't know if it was his father or an uncle, but had his pants sagging. And so they were trying to carry some wood, and the young man, he had to stop every couple of feet to pull his pants up, and it was putting more stress on the older man. And so I just said, hey, brother, why don't you just pull your pants, let's put the wood down, pull your pants up, and you'd be good to go.
Tighten your belt.
And the older man said, man, I've been trying to get him to do that. Somebody, I'm glad somebody said something. And he actually pulled his pants up.
Yeah.
And they grabbed the wood after that and walked out. And, he had an opportunity to interact with somebody that probably wasn't getting on his case all the time. And
Right.
It works.
Yeah, yeah. I know, Dr. Tosin, you spoke to that number of that over 60% of our households are without those fathers. As African American men at the table today, what can we do? What can those African American men and just organizations out there, what can we do to encourage fathers to be active? It may not be able to get back in the home, but what can we say to them? How can we encourage them to take an active role in the family?
Yeah. I mean, just quickly, I would stress to them that communication is the most important thing, not finances. Because a lot of them disengage because they feel like they can't financially support the family. And especially if they go on and get a new family, they feel like they can't really spread the resources around. But it's really engagement, it's communication. That's the most important thing they can do. And when they understand that listening to the kid, talking to the kid, guiding them right from wrong is the most important thing, then I think that they understand their capacity and capability on a deeper level than if we just center it around finances.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about that before we end today.
I would go even a little bit deeper. I mean, communication definitely, but just simple time.
Yeah.
Just consistent time. I mean, you don't have, even if you're not in the house or you having issues with the mom, with gadgets today, you don't even have to talk to the mom. You can email her, you can text her, but don't let that interfere with how you communicate with the children, daughter, son. Engage in maybe dropping by the school every now and then. Just one moment in a week, make it consistent. And that is a very, very, very remarkable point.
Yeah. Quality time over money. That's
Anytime.
fatherhood. Quality time over money. And I think a lot of times fatherhood is so based in monetary, and I think we have to change that. Because my son is 3, and I don't even, the most I pay for is daycare. Like when we go out, we don't go to Chuck E. Cheese. We go on a ride in the park, a bike ride in the park, or it's so much. It's or to a museum. It's so many things available. If we just dedicate ourselves and want to spend that quality time. And so I push that to fathers all the time, and the people around me, the fathers around me. It's like you want to take the kids to the park. You want to go on a bike ride. We want to go see the water so they can throw rocks in the water, or feed the birds, whatever it is. And this builds their character. This builds, who they're ultimately going to become. So quality time over money any day.
So it values other contributions besides monetary contributions.
Yeah, he made a tremendous point that definitely I want to highlight is that, we got to help ourselves. We got to help our brothers. We just got to man up. It's that simple. It's like, dude, come on, man. We getting ready to go over to the park, man. Grab your son, grab your daughter. Let's go. Yeah. We don't sit back and just see yourself at the park. Grab everybody. Let's just rally around and just make it. We just got to man up. That was really
yeah. And Mr. Rogers made a good point earlier too when he mentioned talking to the mother, because there's a lot of black males who aren't talking to their kids. because they can't get along with the kid's mother. And when I talk to them, they'll blame the mother for not allowing them to see their kids. And sometimes there are some barriers that's in place, but when I really talk to them about the things that are and are not important, you know, because a lot of times that communication, I have to teach them how to communicate to their child's mother, and what to understand and what you need to ignore. And a lot of them, you know, because sometimes they'll come to pick up their child and they're getting the old accusations and you know, stuff that they think is lies, stuff they think is insulting. What I tell them is that the fathers that I know that best manage that situation understand that somebody bringing up the past doesn't hurt them personally. It doesn't affect them. You're there to pick up your child. So if that ship has sailed, then listen to it. Just listen to it. You know, nod, agree, but move on, because everything should be about your child. So never use that as an excuse for not seeing your child. No woman can keep you from seeing your child unless you let her.
That's great advice.
And that's so cool nowadays. Like, it seems like baby mama drama is like the thing. Like, oh, my baby mama this, my baby mama that. And I'm just like, you know, that shouldn't be something that impedes you from building a relationship with your child. And I'm like, for those who baby mama, I'm like, you know, everybody who's married that I know, we deal with issues too. You know, so it's not like, you know, it's just the baby mama. Like, we all deal with issues, and I think being a part of being a man is being resilient and being able to find solutions to problems and being able to man up, pretty much, you know. But the baby mama thing is like, I have a baby, and it's like, it's the new cool. I have a baby mama. Like, when is
like a badge or something?
Yeah, it's like a badge.
Right. We can tell you right now, that's not cool.
Yeah.
Okay? That's not cool. Cool is making sure you actively involved and engaged in that child's life.
But individually, what men can do is celebrate each other. For example, if I see a young man pushing a stroller down the street, comes by my house, hey, how you doing? You know, I'm glad to see you out here with your kid. You know, do you have the resources that you may need to help educate that kid?
Do you know about this program? Do you know about this program?
Yes.
Yeah.
And thank you for being the good father that you are to take your child out today.
I actually got that when I was pushing my oldest daughter in the mall and everything. A couple of ladies, seniors, came up to me and was like, "You're doing a good job, sir."
Yeah.
And kind of put my chest
Yeah.
out like this.
Exactly.
Held the baby a little harder. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, you do need those. You do need that little bit of encouragement. You know what I'm saying? Because that person could be going through whatever, baby mama drama, and then you step in there and you just with just one word, good job.
Yeah.
Good job. Makes all the difference.
And I get that quite often from young black men. And anytime I'm with my daughter by myself, it's you know, several times we've been out. Young black males have been like, you know, that's love, that's respect. And they don't even talk specifically about that, but I know exactly where they're going.
And that's the movement you were talking about. It's coming.
That's
coming.
it. That's it.
And I know it's coming. I mean, the statistics have shown what the absence of the male presence does to the home, does to a community. And I think, you know, if you grew up in a situation without their father, and you've been able to find those surrogate dads, and you realize that what that male bonding meant to you, you certainly want to replicate it. Even if you didn't have it in your home, you knew that's why some people become coaches and teachers, because they want to give it back in that sense. But I think, Victoria, you hit on an excellent point. I'd like to maybe talk a little bit more about it if we get ready to end the discussion today. And that is how to get around, how to convince men and to value their contributions beyond their financial ability. I think it can't be said enough, because it is a significant factor in determining whether men stay in the home or leave, if they can contribute financially. And I don't think we can speak to that enough.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot of it has to do with redefining what manhood is. And you know, we're still caught up in that system, in that old school kind of understanding of what manhood is. I'm the breadwinner, I bring home the money, and this is my sole responsibility, and you take care of everything else. But that's, you know, in modern days, that's not how we operate, right? We both bringing in money, and, you know, this is how the family operates. And I think we're both in an ideal situation. We both have to be major contributors to building character in our children. And so right now, the main objective of me as a father at this particular time when he's 3 is building his character, helping him understand the world a little bit better, helping him understand how his actions impact is going to, what effect his actions are going to have on the world. If it's a bug, sitting in the house, and I say, I don't want him to just step on it. I want him to value God's creation. So it's like, okay, if we don't have to just kill it, we're going to take it outside. So it's just basic, it's small things, and that's being present. That fathers being present in their lives and not just necessarily handing out money. Mm-hmm. This is the character building that we're talking about with fathers. And I think it's simple if we surround ourselves with those examples. I just left my house, my mentor's house. He's an elder with 2 children. He probably get on me because I called him an elder, but with 2 children, and he's been married for a greater time than myself. And we decided we're just gonna have a dinner with our wives. We're going to sit down at the table, we're just going to eat dinner and have a conversation about being fathers, about being parents, and about being husbands and wives. And it supports you. It's a support system because these are things we don't see on a consistent basis.
Absolutely.
So, support.
Right,
yeah.
What are some of the challenges fathers face as it relates to being involved? I mean, I can speak for an example. I have 2 daughters, and my oldest daughter was transitioning from a private school to a public school, and I wanted to try to work with that transition. I wanted to be engaged in her learning, and I was finding that I was just being challenged about why was I really there, what value did I bring. What are some challenges that fathers may face if they want to step up and become more actively involved and positively engaged in their children's lives?
Yeah, I think related to your previous question about finances, I mean, in today's society, with the financial market the way it is right now, you have, fathers who are providing. A lot of times, we're holding down 2 or 3 jobs. And then the fathers who don't have that gainful employment, they're finding that it's hard to really compete in this materialistic culture. And, right now I could easily say, and I talked earlier about communication is number 1, but the reality of it is I don't know what it's like not to have a job and trying to raise a kid at the same time, or trying to enter the kid's life, and seeing fathers around me buying their children all this nice stuff, and my child longing for that, and me not getting the kind of reinforcement from my own child about my contribution because they're comparing what they have to what their friends have. Right. So it is difficult, and I don't want any father watching your program who's having financial hard times to believe that that we're just kind of saying stuff and not really understanding that it's a real big challenge. Right. And so I think all around just all of us trying to adjust to this new economy where so many people are working so hard and have so much less time. I think that's one of the biggest challenges, and I think that it's going to take us all working together. So the reality is there is a measure of finances that has to be involved for even to take the public transportation and see your child. So I think we all need to band together. Fathers that have some means, we need to find some kind of way to transfer our wealth to those who need it for that birthday gift or for that transportation down to the city to see their kid, or to take their kid to Chuck E. Cheese or different things like that.
That goes back to Dr. Dozier's point about having a conversation, whether you know the young man or the man at all, saying, if there's anything I can do to help support you in your efforts to be a good father. Yeah. Are you looking for a job? Let me tell you some people I know and get you in contact with them. Or do you need some assistance with some kind of educational components? Right. And what we can do. So I think, offering some of that advice is certainly a way to help overcome some of those challenges that some fathers have.
I think one of the biggest issues that a group of men have is that ego part. Mm-hmm. Right. You got to throw that ego out the door when it comes to being a father. Like you said about the finances, I know brothers who catch public transportation. They don't have jobs, but they looking for the jobs. But they're instead of relying on the mom, they're grabbing the child. They're watching the child. Have somebody watching while they go to interviews. They catching public transportation because if you 30 years old catching a bus, there's a stigma on that, you know. You have to be able to do whatever you need to do in order to take care and provide for that child. And sometimes it's going to put you in a position where you're not envious. And when you're not in that envious position, you talk to your child and say, look, this is what I'm doing to get to you, you know, to be involved with you. And 9 times out of 10, child don't even care, really.
Yeah, got it.
You don't even care. Yeah, he look at that SUV with the rims and like, oh man, Dad, you should get that. I'm like, son, we working on it.
Yeah.
And
More
that's all
importantly-
they cared. More importantly, you were there to say, son, we're working on
Yeah.
it.
More importantly, you know you can reach me. I'll be here when you need me.
There you go.
You know, there's no doubt, and we know because data has shown it, there's no doubt that fathers do have a positive impact. Whether you're there or not, you have an impact. Your absence has an impact, your presence has an impact. But let's pivot a little bit and talk about educationally. We know that when fathers are involved, children tend to do better academically, they tend to do better socially, they tend to do better mentally, and for young ladies, they tend to engage in sexual activity later and avoid teenage pregnancy. So we know this. Can the value of the male presence be translated or transferred to the classroom?
I'll say, in my situation, I have four, 2 girls and 2 twin boys, all of which are tested advanced math and reading. It's what you put into it. Like you said, that positive aspect of having that presence. And to me, it's degrees. It's like, are you a present father where, you know, okay, that's your son? Or is you a father that's felt? Like I mentioned earlier, when I'm out and my children's friends see me, it's, you know, Deja's dad, Talia's dad. That's being felt. That's, you know, making a difference. And a lot of times we, in this society with the cell phones and the texting and everything like that, you know, we get caught up in other things while that kid is watching TV or playing video games or something like that. You got to turn things off, turn their stuff off, sit them down and say, okay, what did you do today? You know, I don't know. I mean, I think it's a fad now to have dinner together. Everybody's sitting down at one table conversing on, you know, what happened that day. You know, we got to get back to turning things off and meaningful dialogue.
Yeah, but engaging, fathers being engaged in students and my students' lives, and when even just conversations, it's a different, I don't know, you know, black men especially, we have an unexplained charisma with each other, right? So anytime I'm interacting with another black man and when we read each other's souls, there's a mutual respect. So I can call, and he knows, like, so I can call a brother, I can speak to him a little differently. Even the students, you know, it's a wickedness that we both have. So if I'm engaging with a parent, one of my students' fathers, I can talk to him a little differently than I can talk to somebody else. It's just it's something that we have. So, and this helps the child inside of my classroom, because I can talk to the child a little bit differently and help him to understand, like, I know your father.
Right.
Like, we talk. I know what kind of man your father, you know, what kind of man your father wants you to be. So it's just a different feel, and it's always translating into the room. I have one brother, actually, in my class, is a wonderful example. He portrays another image inside of class, but I met his father. So, and I'm just
Right.
like, you know, come on. I know your father. I know exactly what you're doing. Calm all that down. And he's just like, okay. You know, you spotted me, right? So it's you know, when we engage, when black men engage with each other on a level that is positive and productive, it's powerful. It's a very powerful thing, and I think that's definitely translated into the classroom. And I've tried to do it for, you know, every year that I'm inside of the classroom. You know.
Let me read a quote to you. The positive influence of the positive influence of men being in the classroom cannot be disregarded. But what we do know is that less than 2% of teachers are African American males. Is it important to have African American males in the classroom? We only have 2% of the entire teaching profession is African American men. So is it really valuable to have African American men in the classroom? And what should be done to encourage more African American men to enter the teaching profession? And I'll start with you, Dr. Dozier. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think Secretary Duncan was here, 2 days ago at Bowie State, addressing that same issue. And obviously, the Obama administration thinks it's important. I think in terms of role modeling, it's important. I don't know how you get around it. I mean, we do a lot of role modeling for sports and music. We have to do it for academics. You know, it takes a man to raise a man, and if you don't have those bodies in the classroom, I think it's problematic, and we have to begin to address it and fix it, and we are. I mean, I'm seeing more and more, but you know, in some of my research, I've gone to schools where you walk in the building and the boys come running up and they're hugging you and touching you, and you know, suddenly there's more boys running, and they said, oh, there's a man in the building, there's a man in the building. The only male they see in the building is the custodian. So he becomes not only the custodian, but he's that extended father, you know, the role model, and you know, they confide in him, they talk to him. We have to change it, but we have to change the image of teachers also.
Right.
We need to pay men a very livable wage to come in the classrooms and teach. I mean, you and I had the conversation about some of the parent liaisons who gave up more higher paying jobs to be parent liaisons, to be around their kids during the day. That's a commitment.
Commitment, yes.
So yeah, we have to go in that way.
Yeah. You know, being I actually wrote an article about this, how to increase black men in education.
Great article, by the way.
Yeah,
I read it.
I appreciate you reading it. But a couple of points that I hit on. The image of black men in education is just kind of non-existent. Black men are not trained or not. It's not necessarily socially acceptable to be an educator, to be a teacher. It's historically been a women's field. And I think one of the biggest things we can do is, one, start initiatives in high school. Start, just like they have vocational programs in barber and different things of that nature, right. You can start vocational teacher programs in high school for black men. Definitely, it's a livable wage is very important, because black men want to take care of our families. Education and being a teacher, I have a master's degree, and I make less money than my friends who came out with bachelor's degrees who working in the field of IT and computers. Right? So these things have to be checked. Definitely a pay increase, but that's across the board with educators. And different support programs to support educators and have different trainings for black men educators. I think there's one this summer. I forget which foundation it is, but they're trying to get black men higher increase of black males in that field of education. But I think pay increase, teacher training programs in high school to introduce them to the field, and a lot more support programs will probably pull in a lot more black men into the field of education.
Toast, I know you're working on this subject, on the book,
absolutely.
and you've been
and I agree with everything that's already been said. You know, we can't say enough about the value of having black males in the classroom. But I also want to give a different perspective, and mostly because all the important things have already been said, and these are things that's going to be included in my book on black male teachers. But one thing that I think is very important for us is to, we absolutely have to make sure that white female teachers can teach black male students. Yeah. You know, we can't wait on black male teachers to come and save the day. Right now, 63% of teachers are white females, and 80% of teachers are white. 2% of teachers are black males. Black males represent about 6% of the U.S. population right now. So if we got it up to 6%, then it would be representative of our population in society, which would triple it. That would be a success. However, if you count the number of teachers someone will have from kindergarten to the 12th grade, that would mean that right now, a black male is likely to see one teacher who looks like him. If we tripled it, then they would be likely to see about 3 teachers who look like them over there from K to 12th grade. So black male teachers in the class alone isn't going to solve all of our problems. And I'm also kind of concerned, we're going to talk about this in the book, that black male teachers are being pigeonholed into this professional whose sole responsibility is to save underperforming black males. Black male teachers have a responsibility to every student, regardless of gender or race. They are professionals just like everybody else, and their contribution to the classroom should be seen as a benefit to all students, not just black males. And so we have to be able to protect the identity of black male teachers so that they're not pigeonholed and stereotyped, and their value isn't seen as something that's good for the entire system. Because they have to be able to move up to any school, anywhere, in any position, position to lead teachers of all different races.
Makes a great point. Excellent point.
But can I ask you?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
How do you? That was an excellent point. How do you train white women? How do you train white women to teach black children, black men? What are you, I mean? Because that's something that I've been thinking about. Yeah. What are some of the solutions to that?
Yeah, and I'm also the editor of the Journal of Negro Education. At the end of the summer, we're going to put out a special issue on teacher education in the black community. And so we're looking at all types of different strategies. And it's not an easy answer to that question. There are certain programs and certain strategies that we're evaluating for this particular issue. A friend of mine and colleague at Columbia University is using a documentary film called Beyond the Bricks that looks at experiences of young black males in public schools. And she's showing that film to groups of all teachers, mostly white female teachers, and having focus groups with them afterwards to see if it broadened their understanding of the kids that they're working with. Because we talked about that. Well, you talked about it even before the cameras went on, about that disconnect between who they are, their community, their understanding of the issue, and what they're dealing with. And I believe that what separates an effective white female teacher and white teacher in general from one that is really doing more damage than good, what separates them is a level of compassion, understanding, and empathy that they have for the communities and families of the children that they serve. The ones that are willing to take that walk home with the kid just one day so they can see the path that they're taking to get to and from school, to really understand their family's challenges and their struggles, and to really understand how this kid is navigating one area outside the school that may require him to keep his pants sagging down, to walk with a mean mug and a grit, and a grit in his face. Because there are some communities where just out of survival, they have to look that way just temporarily to get them
to get through.
Yeah, to get through, and then they have to come to school and shut that off.
Right.
And so for that teacher to really take the time to understand that they have to navigate that and say, you may have to look like that out there, but in my class, I'm going to show you how to present yourself so that you can make the best grade, not just in my class, but in the class next door. So these are all the things that it takes. But it takes a lot of intensive retraining of these teachers to do that.
What are you hearing back from the teachers, the white female teachers, when you present this opportunity, this training to them? Are you getting positive feedback?
Very positive feedback. And I can share some quotes, which I don't have them prepared right now, but at a different day, because we have everything transcribed. So I have all the raw reports of these focus groups. And some of the things that I've read, is really, really eye-opening. And I remember one, and this isn't a teacher who participated in the focus group, but another white female teacher who talked about how she was so upset with this one young black male because he used to sleep in her class, and she would look at him and he'd just be, dozing off and trying to keep herself up, but sometimes not making it, and so she resented that. She took it personally, and then but then one day she just decided to talk to him about it, take him off to the side and say, I think it's very disrespectful to me when you sleep in my class. And then she found out that he was actually a single father, back to this case right here. And so he had just taken on custody of his young daughter, and he was working at Walmart at night. And so he would come to class tired. So after that conversation, two things happened. The kid tried harder to stay awake, and she perceived what he was doing differently. She didn't perceive it as disrespect. And so when he's doing that, she's focusing on him pushing his head up, not the head dropping down, you know. And so it takes that level of understanding to really, you know, move them to a different place.
Also, that kind of sensitivity is not just for white female teachers. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that applies to middle-class black males and females.
Yeah.
That's Kunjufu, black middle class teachers, low class students, or something like that. He talks about you know, teachers feeling that they are above their students, the students that they serve actually, and the reason why they're even there. So yeah.
And I was just thinking the same thing, Dr. Dozier, that type of training is probably something beneficial, that would be beneficial to all teachers, regardless of their ethnic background. But I certainly do think that since we know that a large portion of the teachers are white female teachers, that is certainly a valuable training. William, do you want to chime in here on this at any point?
I just great points. The training for the white female teachers, you finding that they're receptive. They're seeing components that they misjudged.
Yeah. In the focus groups that we've done, and I'll know a lot more after she analyzes, and I'm talking about my colleague at Columbia University, Yolanda Suez-Ruiz. And so that article will be out at the end of the summer. But from the transcripts that I've seen, you know, it's just really interesting stories and the interesting narrative. One of them talked about this a black male student asking her to borrow a pen. She told him she didn't have one, and then an hour later, she pulled a silver, you know, one of the fancy pens like that out of her purse and started writing with it. And she noticed him look, and you know, his eyes just dropped, and you know, she could sense it on his face. And she said that the training helped her to process that whole experience in a different way. You know, just understanding that premium that young black males put on respect. So she would have been better off saying, you know, I have a pen, but you know, you can't get this one. Right. You know, I'm gonna find you another one, but you know, I had too many pens walking off, so this one right here got to stay in my purse. Right. You know, he would respect that a whole lot better than her saying, I don't have one. Right. When she really meant, I don't have one for you. For you.
We had to edit that out.
But the fact that she shared that whole story, you know, I mean, written, you know, meant that she's starting to, you know, the dollar's starting to move in her mind a little bit.
Well, that sounds like you have some rich information, and I look forward to reading the article. I wouldn't mind even reading the raw transcript.
Right.
Because
probably a little bit more interesting.
This has been a great conversation. I want to thank each of you for coming out today. But before we end the show, I want to get everyone's final thoughts on the value, the importance, the significance that fathers have in their children's lives, in their communities, and their families. And I'll start with you, Dr. Tolson, and we'll go around the table.
Yeah. Well, I think I talked a lot at the end, so there's no new point that I need to make that I haven't already made. But I will let everyone know that I am available by email if anybody wants to contact me about anything that I've talked about. That's itolson, ITOLDSON @howard.edu. You could also Google my name and find my contact information that way.
And again, you know, I think definitely I appreciate you for engaging the conversation on fatherhood. I'm engaging the conversation on black male educators because it's something that's needed. And I think it starts with just a basic dialogue and to not be afraid to express our concerns and not be afraid to engage each other in the different things that we believe. And again, you can contact me. More information I'm on my website, which is brothervictorious.com, just like it sounds. Or you can Google my name as well, or you can find me on the patch for educational articles.
Thank you for your article. It was very interesting. It actually what inspired the show today, so thank you.
Appreciate
Dr.
that.
Dozier.
I think there's a sea change coming. It's happening in our lifetime, and We're at the point where we need this change, and we're going to see it.
Well, just me, I'm straight to the point. I'm glad to be on this panel with distinguished gentlemen such as yourselves who share the same ideas. But I just want to say, like, men, you got to man up now. We are too significant in our children's lives to be represented by these percents. Me personally, I count it as an honor to be a father, to be a dad, to be an African-American male. It's a great responsibility. The fact that I'm not married, I'm a single dad, that's fine. I still have a responsibility to my children. Those first flowers are going to come from me that my daughter receives. Those first earrings, pulling out the chair, opening the door, those things she needs to see from me, her father. So I just ask you guys to man up. Be who you are.
Right on.
Thank you. Great words. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us today. And please remember the role education plays in our lives.